Hello, good afternoon. Happy Saturday to everyone who is out there. I just said happy Saturday, did I not? I did. Welcome to another episode of Speaking Plain English. I am your host, Roberta, and we're going to have an awesome guest today. One we're actually bringing back from a previous episode. Her name is Ayanna Johnson. She is absolutely phenomenal, guys. She is an author, she is a spoken word artist, she is a minister. Yes, I'm saying that because I'm telling this woman has word in her. She is a playwright as well. She does so many wonderful things. She actually also has she is founder of a wonderful nonprofit organization as well called AFCOM. And just you're gonna meet her and you're gonna love her, I guarantee you. And we're going to go ahead and we're gonna bring our guest out here as our author of our highlighted author, Mrs. Ayanna Johnson. Hello.
Hi, so glad to be here.
So glad to have you here. And again, have you here back again. Because before, if those of you who may not have seen a previous episode, she was a guest as well with one other regarding our episode talking about child loss. And if you were able to choose to tune into that episode, you saw that she does have one of her several books that she does have out. And that is something that we're going to talk about, one of those books that we're going to talk about today. So, Ayanna, I gave you a little bit of a brief introduction, so I would like for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
So hello everyone, so glad to be here on today's show, Speaking Plain English. Again, I am Ayanna, not to be mistaken for Ayanna, but Ayanna. And it's always such a pleasure to be here with Roberta and on her show, just to speak real talk. So I am a spoken word artist and author. I've authored 3 books. I have put on some shows, written some shows. I've turned one of my books into a stage play. So doing some great things, doing whatever it is that God has placed in my hands to do, but writing is my first love. I am the founder of a nonprofit organization, a Christian faith-based community service organization based in New York, AFCOM. So I just love doing whatever the Lord gives me to do while I have breath in my body to do it. So that's in short who I am.
Yes. I'm telling you, this woman has so many hats. So many hats, and she does them all well, I have to say. So let's dive in a little bit. So again, you have like your nonprofit, you have your books that you've written, and you have the screenplay that you wrote. So many different things. Which, as you have already alluded to, that writing is your first love. Do you have? Let me ask you this: do you have a favorite? I'll put it like that that you've written so far.
It's interesting because people ask me that question and I say that's like picking between your children, like who is your favorite? I really don't. I really don't, because each one has its purpose for each season in which it was birthed. So I don't have a favorite. Some people do have their favorites, but I don't.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you what I really love. Besides, as far as all of your work as it is, your spoken word, I wouldn't call it, I guess you would call it an album or
For CD, yeah.
spoken word CD.
Do we still say CD? I think I
Right.
said that and they laughed at
We
me.
don't really
And
put
I was
out
like,
CDs
my spoken
anymore.
word downloads? I don't know.
It's so, I'm telling you. Now that one is not the words of my, what is that, the words of my mouth? No,
Wisdom is the first book. The It's Time
it's
spoken
time.
word is the one that is the downloadable spoken words music.
Y'all, that one, oh my goodness. And shout out to my brother Jamel, who was the one who actually did the music behind it. Listen, let me explain to y'all. There's so many different pieces in that one. I have to say, and I guess it may be a little bit controversial, but it is. My favorite of that whole thing is manipulation.
Mm.
And oh my goodness, would you please, if you can, could you recite that for us? If you, I know I'll put you on the spot, but if you're able to.
You know, it's so interesting. Yeah, yes, I do a little piece, but just for the audience who wonders, when you have a number of pieces committed to ministry that you have, to memory that you have ministered through for so many years, and then you haven't been ministering through them, sometime I have to go through this like mental Rolodex. So as I'm smiling, I'm like, okay, can I pull it up?
Which one is it?
So let me see how much of it I can do, but
Okay.
this is manipulation. Yes, I go to church and praise him with the best of them. I can mock a tongue, hoop and holler. I'll jump and shout. Can I get $1, the number to your bank account? See, I'll say what needs to be said to fill your void and get ahead because I'm manipulation. God has no parts in me. I'm a component of the body entrenched in iniquity. I've had many, if not all of you, at some point in time. The qualities I chose to show you was that which was sublime. You were so blinded by what I wanted you to see. For some of you, I destroyed it. And for others, well, I interfered with your destiny. Either I was manipulating you or manipulating through you. You were so caught up that people would do what you wanted them to do. I was the one controlling. You were the fool. See, I'll say what needs to be said to fill your void and get ahead because I'm manipulation. God has no parts in me. I'm a component of the body entrenched in iniquity. I've had many, if not all of you at one point in time. Rape, molestation, insecurity, all of that just comes along with me. And I'm going to pause right there because I don't remember. But it's been a while. It's been a while, but it would come back to me. But yeah, that's manipulation. That's a snippet of it. If you get the CD, you can hear the whole thing. If you go to the website, there's a snippet of it played as well.
Yes. Oh my goodness, guys. So let me ask you this, Ayanna. What was it that brought you to that piece in particular?
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I can pinpoint one particular thing. I'm observer. That's a lot of people who tend to write. If you ask them, if they're avid writers in creating characters and things, they observe, they watch, they look at behaviors and mannerisms because they're able to write that into characters. So a lot of the pieces are inspired by situations that I observed, maybe interactions I've had. And so this was really a combination of the people factor in Christianity, in churches, not in all Christianity and not in all churches, but the people factor. So I was in relationships with people who were like, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I saw how they were manipulating and doing things differently. Or I was in other settings where I was like, that's not God,
Right.
And then the rest of what the pieces are in it. And so then the words start coming. This is written from the perspective of the spirit of manipulation. I often have to tell people that. So it's not me talking, it's not a person, but it's the spirit of manipulation really talking to you and giving you a bird's eye view in terms of how it operates.
I like that. And the reason why I say that is because I see it as a kind of a wake up call. I'll put it like that, to the church itself, to kind of see how I guess you can put it through the eyes of those who have been, misused or manipulated. And so because of that, I think that's something that needs to, be brought out, because in a lot of times, and I've noticed in some ways, some churches, especially now that social media is so open and anybody can pretty much have their own ministry now, or you want to call it ministry, it's capable that a lot of people are seeing Christ being misrepresented. I'll put it like that. And how and that kind of gives people a bad taste. You know what I mean? So it kind of bring that particular piece is kind of, I say it's a wake up call for those who truly have the minds to want to, who actually want to represent Christ the right way, who may not be, and then also on top of that, on another side, I see it as those who have made mistakes before, have been, as you said, have been used as far as being the manipulators, how they can see themselves in that as well and say, you know what, that was me at one point, or maybe that is me, so I might need to do something. So I like how you were bold enough, I'll put it like that, bold enough to be able to write it and to even present it, because it's necessary. I believe it's necessary. So
it's definitely twofold. It's definitely a way for people to see. A lot of times we talk from a very victim perspective, like, oh, this was done to me, but to see how, one, you may have been manipulated, and that is it can go beyond church. Just, you talking about the people factor. People manipulate people, and since we allow ourselves to be manipulated by how we play both sides of the coin, but at the source of it, it's a spirit, and it's not a spirit of God. It's a demonic spirit, and it manipulates it a variety of ways. And so that's really the purpose of the piece.
Awesome. So I wanted to ask you again, what is something that kind of like drew, where did you get started with just writing altogether?
I was an avid reader. Praise God for my parents who definitely supported me and read to me and made sure I was reading early and all that good stuff. So I was an avid reader. And being an avid reader, that just stemmed into, I guess, writing. I do remember my first really real poem, and I was 9. And I remember its title, Life is So Important. And it was inspired by, which many of my pieces are, by some type of experience, emotion, or my reaction to an experience, whether that was mine or someone else's. That's usually how a lot of the pieces are birthed. And that's how that piece was birthed. My sister, who is a couple years my senior, a high school friend of hers had committed suicide, and she had just found out. And I remember being a young child kind of thinking, whoa, how does that happen? Only a teenager? And I was younger, and I remember just this piece started flowing, and I went and I wrote it. And then, my mother's there in the kitchen straightening my sister's hair, and I come in there and I'm like, I want to read this poem. And I read it, and they're like, hot comb in hand and looking at me like, like, did this kid just come in here? But that's when God really birthed my first real poetry piece in reaction to an emotion. That's how he's always dealt with me with spoken word pieces.
Do you remember it at all?
I remember it was on yellow legal pad paper. I remember that. And I remember the first line being, life is so important, but death is always there.
Ooh, wow. That right there is powerful in itself, to be honest, especially at 9.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah, which makes you realize you never know how situations impact young people. And that was just me hearing, a young person had committed suicide. And I'm like, wait, a teenager? My sister's friend? Wait, what? Like then that kind of reality was like, whoa. And so there's a lot of real life situations that impact young people at an early stage. They just react to it differently.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's absolutely true. And that's something that we as adults have to understand and remember, that even though, they're young and we have a tendency to think, oh, you're young, you don't go through anything. But there are so many different things that kids go through. I mean, even, you mentioned that when you were 9 years old back then. And I mean, imagine now, like
Yes.
they have these mindsets, and they're able to do things that and think about things in ways that I would never even, I'm playing Barbie dolls and stuff at 9 and 10 years
Right.
old when these
It's an
kids are
exposure.
thinking about so many other things. And it's like, wow. I mean, and they're so profound, and they're
Yes.
innocent,
Yes.
they're innocent with their thought process. They're just trying to figure it out. And a
Right.
lot of times they go through things that we just would never imagine,
Exactly.
and we may not even know even until now, because sometimes they keep it back and they hold
Right.
back with it. So I'm glad that you were able to have an outlet, where
Right.
you were able to voice what it is that you felt during that time. Now, is
Right.
that something that writing does for you?
Definitely. Whether or not it's been journaling, whether or not it has been writing through spoken word pieces, it has been an outlet to process just thoughts, my reactions to things, to processes. Just I think we don't give ourselves time to process. And it's funny, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, I need to do a little more writing. I'm writing in other ways, but that process writing where creativity is birthed is really important. So that time to just react to something or look at something. It could be funny, like process it, think about it. Sometimes journaling it, whichever way someone expresses it. It could be singing, it could be playing it, it could be, telling a joke about it, or it could be writing. So yeah, writing, journaling, that's definitely been a part of my process.
I like that. And that reminds me, because I know me, I like to I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I started last month in August, actually, I started therapy. And one thing that my therapist quickly picked up about me is that I like to try to rush through things instead of actually taking time to process. I'll acknowledge it and be like, okay, this has to go now and on to the next. But what she does with me is that she tells me, okay, no, what you have to do is you have to sit down, you have to acknowledge, you have to allow yourself to process it instead of just, letting it go. So I like how you were saying that it's part of, it's part of processing. It's just sitting and thinking about it and acknowledging, how does this make me feel? or what does this mean to me? Or,
Right.
you know, how is, and a lot of times, like one thing she'll ask me is, how do you feel about that? Or, you know, do you have any thoughts or words about certain things? And I'll sit there and I'm thinking like, I honestly don't know. And in that moment, what she says to me is, okay, so pay attention to what your body's doing. Like, is your heart racing? You know, is your temperature elevated? Are you playing with your hands, or, you know, are your legs crossed, or are you tense anywhere? You know, taking it, it's a part of taking notice and acknowledgement of exactly what's going on, and using it. I like that you're able to, once you take something that you enjoy doing, taking an art, I'll put it like that, and using it to kind of release what it
Yeah.
is that is there, because it needs to come out in one way or another. And because if we hold it, you know, if we hold it in, that can be very detrimental to our health. And a lot of people don't realize that, especially if we're not
Manifest.
trying to process. Say that
Right.
again.
Manifest. Just like you said, if you don't process either way. So if you hold it in, it's still going to manifest.
Mm.
It's just that you no longer have the choice of how it manifests. So we either
Ooh.
into, let me process it, let me talk about it, let me feel it, be in the moment, let me react to it, or we think we repress it and we give it power. So then it begins to manifest however it wants, and we don't have a choice in it. Now we're reacting
Oh my
the
goodness.
very thing we gave power to.
Wow, that's good. Wow. So I'm gonna ask you a question about your book, The Other Woman. Where? Please. Please, please, please. Where did that come from? Please.
So I started off by saying, you know, whenever I'm promoting the book, I'm like, yes, it has juicy tidbits. Yes, it talks about everything you think about when you think about the other woman, but it gets a little bit deeper, right? It talks
Mm.
about otherness and secondary position and walking outside of your godly calling and purpose. And so it came from experiences. It came from multiple experiences, actually, and not just personal ones. There are, if anyone reads the book, there are a number of accounts in there. And then the further you get into the book, there are different accounts of being the other woman in it. And it's written from the term other woman because we have become so comfortable with the term the other woman, although there are many other men, right? So it's actually a book for men, women, married, single, just those who are interested in the topic, or those that are just avid readers. So it's really not just about women, but it's just, that's the term. So I took a term we're familiar with, that's the other woman. And then we said, okay, well, let's dig into this. And as I was dealing with experiences with that, I was in a relationship where, you know, someone cheated on me. So there was the other woman. I was with peers where we were talking about experiences, and some of our experiences were we were the other woman. Some of our experiences were that the other woman was someone who was of a lesser seemingly standard, someone that we had underestimated. As I was in these circles talking to different women, it was just these revelations started coming out, and I started thinking deeper and about it. So that's the process moment, right? Like, and just getting a chance to react to it, and then really letting God, because that was a different type of writing for me. Like, I'm a poet first. So words in my mouth, meditations of my heart. My first book is a poetry book, right? You want to speak life, you want to speak words. That's the word. That's the book you want to get. This book was a Christian ministry, you know, purpose calling book, and took a different style of writing. And so that took a lot more process. It took a lot more prayer, because it wasn't just my story. It was the accounts of other women and other men. So as we were having these conversations, and I had a lot of male peers, not a lot, but some good male peers. And then I was looking at their stories where they were the other men. I was just like, whoa, what is happening? And then we started, the term I coin in there is otherness, walking in otherness, and what that means and what that looks like. So everyone always asks me when they get to like a piece that's real revelatory, or a book that's like, whoa, what's going on with this? They're like, where are you in this, and where does it come from? And I'm like, you gotta read it and you gotta figure it out for yourself.
Exactly.
but in my writing, I'm in a little bit of all my writings, whether or not it is my personal account, it is my reaction to other accounts, whether or not it is someone else's story that they're allowing me to tell. I tell it from a certain first person view so that whoever's reading it, they can begin to empathize. It's legitimately, or not legitimately, it is intentionally written like that so that we're not always pointing outside of ourselves, but we're looking at it, we're reading it almost from our own personal perspective. So that's a little bit about how Other Women came about. So juicy tidbits was like, what's going on? And then it just became something a little deeper. And I'm like, oh, wait, let's take off these layers. What more is here?
So listen, out of I'm not even gonna say out of anything. I'm gonna tell y'all to just get every single one that she has, because you're gonna find yourself there one way or another. And again, like she says, it doesn't necessarily have to be otherness as far as even a relationship is concerned. There are so many different ways that you can be the other, per se. Even in your calling, in your ministry, in your career, like there's so many different ways that you can kind of sell yourself short in a way. I'll put it like that, because that's typically what being an other is in a nutshell. That's the concept of otherness, is selling yourself short from what you actually deserve, whether or not, or not even whether or not you even realize that you deserve. Because there's this whole thing of main and other, but in honesty, I feel like there shouldn't be a main or an other. I think that's just, you're just it, and that's it. And how some people are not able to what's the word? Some people are not able to really own up to that standard, or they're not patient enough, or they're not confident enough to allow themselves to understand that there is a place where you belong. There is where you fit, where you're supposed to be, and nobody else will be able to fit that position. Again, that's with anything. That's not just with relationship. That's where anything goes. So that one it's a good read, guys. Go get that, really, seriously.
I wanted to say something to that. It's a quick read as well, so it's not going to be something that you have to feel like, oh, I'm going to be reading this forever. No, but I think it most of what God gives me is often not comfortable, and a lot of what the talent that God has given me causes me to write things that aren't always comfortable. But it will definitely be thought-provoking. It will definitely spark conversation. Even if the reference that you just gave, which if we talk about our slang vernacular, the idea of, well, he's the main or I'm the main, right? And that came out a couple of years back, right? But the fact that we accept that walking in otherness is walking in a lower standard than what you're called to be. And if you don't take the time to realize who you're called to be in your career, in your relationships, in your creativity, in the birthing of your talents or businesses or whatever else, then you will always kind of let someone else define you, or you'll settle for something that's lower than that. So even in our slang, the things that we accept, oh yeah, that's funny, I'm the main, so you come to me. Wait a minute, why are you not the only? So that means there's a part of our thought processes that needs to be checked. When we adopt things like that, or we are comfortable with things like that, and we don't question them, it means there's something in our mentality that we haven't questioned, that there's an element of that we're okay with some otherness. Like, oh, I know there's going to be another, but I'm the main. No, that's not good enough, right? So I know I'm going to be the CEO, but maybe I'm just the figurehead, and that's the person who really has the power. No, that's not good enough. I know I should be having my own business because I've put years into developing a business, and but now I'm comfortable here, or I'm working under somebody else, so that's the other. So there's so many ways that I often tell people, I always know when someone's read the book, because it's a mirror onto them. So when they're like, oh yeah, you're talking about that other woman, I'm like, they didn't read the book. That is for the title. But then whenever people come like, oh my gosh, I saw me, or da-da-da, that's what God does. He did for me, turned the mirror onto me. And then after turning onto me, and once I wrote it, it allowed other people to have the mirror turned on them.
And that's a good read. That's what you call something that's what you want as an author, to be able to have people see themselves in your work. And that way, that it's changing. It's life changing if you allow it to be. I'll put it like that. Because some people read just for entertainment, which is fine. But it's something when you're able to take a piece that you've written and then have other people, that's got to be rewarding to hear those testimonies and those stories.
Those are because then the purpose of the writing is manifested. It really isn't about, you can, I mean, you will always love to say, I sold millions of books and I'm on a top bestseller. That's awesome. Every author wants to do that. So if they say they don't want that, that's a lie. You do want that. But when you're in those, book clubs, whether or not they're critiquing it, disagreeing with it, refuting it, or supporting it, you want to know that it's engaging thought process, and it has some type of impact. That, I would think, for any author, but definitely for me, is the biggest thing. Did it have an impact? Was it life-changing as it was intended to be?
Wow. And that's a true author. I say it's a true author in yourself. So I'm telling you, congratulations to you again on your accomplishments and the pieces that you've written, and how, that's a great accomplishment for me. Like you said, yes, you want the bestsellers, you want to be New York Times bestseller and all that stuff. But even if you don't reach that, it's more important, I'll put it like that, to be able to reach people, the people who it has, who it has
Right,
touched, or touch the people who has read it. And
right,
that's because I honestly, I'll put it like this: when it comes to different, like, these different titles and these different awards and things like that people get, I feel like they're biased. I feel like they have their own little politics in it, and then certain people get, what they want to get, but not they all deserve, especially in music, especially in music. But I think that it's the most impactful when you're able to, to get testimonies from people that have been able to come to you and say, oh my goodness, this has touched me in so many ways. Oh my goodness, this made me think about things a different way. This has changed me. This has allowed me to, to heal, and, different things like that. And so that I believe is the greatest accomplishment. Yes. Again, like you said, you want the titles and you want the awards and you want the accolades and the acknowledgement and all that stuff, because that eventually comes with it. But the greatest reward is to have somebody be, relate to what it is that you write. And kudos to you. I compliment you, and I love the fact that you've been able to have that. So we're gonna get in. That being said, we're going to get into your most recent. Woo, this last book that she wrote is it's personal. It's very, very personal, and it's deep. And the fact that so let's just put it like this: it was the one that we discussed in the other episode. It's called My Journey Holding On to Faith Through Grief, and I'll let you go over that in a little bit. But in as far as what the book about is, it's what the book is about in itself, I was able to find other because she's talking about the loss of her child, of her son, and the thing is that I was able to actually find me in there, and not just through the miscarriages that I experienced, but through different other types of grief that I've experienced in my life. And I honestly believe that grief comes in so many different ways, and it's different for different people. And so for you to be able to write it in such depth and in such detail, it's, guys, you have to read it. Y'all really do, regardless of what it is that you're dealing with. And I understand that some people may not be ready yet, if it's new for you. But if you have experienced grief in any way, form, or fashion, whether it was a person, whether it was a job, a lot of people have experienced grieving, losing businesses and things like that. Whatever type it is, I would definitely admonish you to get a hold of this book. So Ayanna, if you don't mind, just go over a little bit of what this book is about, and what it was that, like, your process writing this book.
Sure. I didn't expect it to be a book. That wasn't the purpose. And interestingly enough, as I was going through my process of grief, there were some people, and they thought they were encouraging me, but they was like, okay, you're going to have a book coming out of this, and that was their way of just saying, you're going to process it and it's going to touch the lives of many, probably because they were familiar with my gift and talents, or how, I process things. But that wasn't the purpose at all. You asked me about writing, and I told you how, writing is my first love. And it was, if anyone starts with the book, is actually my journal. It starts off as my journal. And so these were accounts, current raw accounts as I was experiencing them, because it was literally my journal entries. And not that I meant for it to become a book, but as I was going through the process of a level of grief that I've never experienced before, nor expected my life to take that turn at that point in my life, then the processing, the being in the moment, seeing the experience and processing it then took on form. So looking into what was grief and what are the stages of grief, and well, am I here with that? Is that, coming out that way? But what more? Like there was more to this. Like life does not stop when there is a loss. Your life is impacted when there is a loss. And if you are not careful, you can get stuck in loss and never continue to live, or never continue to see, how has my life been impacted? How have I grown? I am not the same person I was 6 years ago. That's just the reality. There's a maturity, there's a soberness, there is an empathy that comes with that level of loss. And so I'm not just talking about losing a child, but when you're talking about divorce, leaving something that was supposed to be a forever, and you realize that a part of me is not coming back. Okay, that's just a reality. Don't say, okay, well, I'm a whole person after this. No, you were joined one. It's been ripped apart. Part of you is not coming back, right? And so what do you do? How do you process? And then how do you become? Right? You mentioned it, the loss of a business. You know how many, whatever we put our love and our treasure in, for some people, your baby was your business. Like this, all of you, and you birth it, it comes forth. It could be your business, your ministry, a certain gift or talent. There's a process you go through. You go through labor, you birth it, you raise it. And for some people, you go and get the chance to raise it within the first 5 years and it fails. Or you raise it and there's complications. And now, just people don't look at you the same because of how poorly you handle it, whatever. With loss comes impact. And so with the book, it was my journey, because although it was a situation that I didn't just experience by myself, obviously it was something I experienced with my husband. It was something that our children experienced as well. But this was my journey. So the book is my journey, but it's holding on to faith through grief, because if you are not careful, like I said, grief can consume you. Grief has consumed a lot of people, being in these post-pandemic days. People have become stuck, have been unable to come out. And now that we are out and around each other, mental illness is higher. How we have to handle each other more gently, because the reactions to things aren't the same. People aren't rational as we thought. There's no real reasoning with individuals, because how people are responding to loss and grief. And now you're surrounded by people, and maybe that's agitating you. Maybe that's irritating you because you never really dealt with grief while you were still alone, whether or not it was grief or whatever. And pandemic, we lost people, we lost lifestyles, we lost finances, we lost relationships, like all of that. But it's about holding on to faith through grief. And that was the point of encouragement, because I saw people become consumed and become shells of their former selves, because they got consumed by grief and couldn't get out of it. They saw no other purpose unless they were still fixated on the one they were with, or looking for the one that they with, or the business of what could have been, should have been. They don't know how to restart, how to move forward. And that consumption is dangerous. And so hold on to faith for whatever it is. Is that faith that you will have a child again? Is that faith that you will be whole even after the divorce? Is that the faith that you can start the same business again, or branch out and do a new one? Like, we're forever changing, right? We're changing and supposed to be growing. And so the book is really to speak life to people, to hold on faith. Faith is your belief system. And is it the belief system in yourself? Is it your belief system in God and who God has created you to be before you were predestined? Hold on to that, because that's going to get you through the grief. I have some people who, periodically they'll ask me, how are you doing, with the loss of your father or your brother or your son or your this or your that. And I'll respond positively, not because it was cliche, but that's actually how God has me feeling. I'm like, God, I thank you that I'm not where I was. Like, every once in a while, I remember how heavy that thing felt. And sometimes people want you to still be stuck where you are, like, want to be like, are you still really down about that? Are you still just kind of, how are you processing? I gotta, are you making it through, and sometimes those questions are necessary at certain times, but there's some people that want you to be like that all the time. And so they're shocked when you're moving forward. But the reality is, wait a minute, we're born to eventually die, is what we do in between. And sometimes we allow ourselves to die with others or with things or with situations. And then we're never living. But if you don't expect me to bounce back in some way, I'm not the same woman I was 6 years ago. But how I bounce back in some way, you got to expect that to happen.
Right.
And sometimes people don't. So the purpose of the book is to get you to that point, that holding on to faith, so that you do have that bounce back. You do have that new life. You do have that new discovery of what more God will have for you to do.
Ooh, man, listen. Oh my goodness, so much goodness in that. So much goodness in that. And this is one, especially that last part you were saying, how people don't expect, I guess you don't want you to bounce back. I'm going to say this. At some point, especially when, after I lost who I was going to marry, like 14 years ago, I believe it is this year, I felt guilty for kind of like, well, I wasn't sure whether or not, listen, wasn't as good, y'all? I wasn't sure whether or not it was okay for me to bounce back. I wasn't sure whether or not, I would feel like, okay, am I always supposed to feel guilty? Is it dishonoring him if I'm not sad all the time? And when I tell you, being consumed in grief, that's a real thing. It is such a real thing.
You just touched on something that was so key. And, guilt is also part of that grief phase. It is like, whoa, this morning I woke up, like I went from having every minute, was a sun moment, it'd be like, and my husband just look at me, I'm like, I'm having an every minute. Every minute, how many minutes are in a day, to becoming, I'm having every moment. Right. And so that means I had moments to breathe in between that. To it being, I'm having it every day. Right. So that means I'm moving along. So I begin to see progression to the point that, do I remember? Yeah, but those memories don't consume me. And I'm able to then interact with other people for whom it is fresh. And sometimes people, because they're stuck in their grief, when you lose someone, they want you to stay there. And they want to put a time limit on how soon you move forward. Not knowing what is your breaking point, what is your salvation point, what is your healing point. How do you know that this person does not need to move on in 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 months? And it starts as just a friendship, not like something was there, not that you didn't love the other person previously, but how do you know that wasn't your process, your healing point? Just being able to have a friend again and being able to learn it, to break that phase of guilt. People don't understand it. So sometimes they're like, oh, you moved on that quickly, or, you don't need anybody else. You're just fine. You have me. Well, you aren't that person, know. So the idea that we want sometimes people to stay consumed where they are is that it demonstrates that way. And we have to be careful. And that's why the book is not only for those who have gone through different types of losses, because it can cover any one of us, but it also lets you see, am I holding someone else bound to their loss? I want you to grow. I want you to breathe again. I want you to, live again. Just a scenario, I remember watching this so clearly. It was a couple, they might have been on Oprah or some other show, and they had a set of three little children. And in a major car accident, everybody was hurt, but they lost all 3 children. All 3 children, okay, died. And the couple, had to go through a lot. They ended up, maybe 6 years later, whatever, they went through IVF, and they ended up having triplets. And when they had triplets, they had the same number of kids. They had 3, but one was a son like before, and the other 2 were girls like before. It's not like they were trying to do that. The children actually even look like the elder sibling.
Wow.
And so people were kind of like, audience? Well, were you trying to have them take the place of? And the parents were even saying, even as they reflected on their time, they still had tears in their eyes. You cannot take away that moment, who those children were then. But they
Right.
said, we've just been blessed to add on to the family and to be able to pour in other children. They weren't replacers. You know, we tell them about them. We have their pictures up. And so sometimes people want you to get stuck in your grief and be the lonely parents, and that you're plagued by the stigma that you lost your children in this tragic accident or whatever else, or you lost your husband in 9/11, or you lost you're now the divorcee, or now you're the widow or the widower. And they want to leave you with that label because they can define that. But when you want to
Mm.
hold on to faith, faith says, I'm going to push through, and it doesn't look like what you think. It doesn't even look like what I expect. I don't look like what I've been through. But why is that? When you're holding on to faith of God, that God, you bring me through, or the faith that God, you'll take me to another place, or God, faith, you allow me to parent someone else, or God, faith, you allow me to bring forth children, or faith that, you know what, I lost my father, but you had another person to stand in the gap. Whatever it is, that is really what that holding on to faith through this process is. It doesn't negate it, but it allows you to go through it anchored to something.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That is so good. That is so good. And I'm glad that you mentioned this. I really am, because what it does is it allows people to understand, listen, yes, we go through losses. Yes, there are things that we have gone through, but we are not meant to stay there. It is
Yes,
okay to move forward. It is okay to heal. Matter of fact, it's necessary to heal. It's okay to, of course, you're going to have your moment, and all that's always going to be there. Of course, there's going to be times when that's going to come back to your mind. Of course, that's just a part of it. Just like you said, you're not the same person as you were before that loss, whatever the loss was, but it is okay. I want anybody who may be seeing this, or I want you to understand, it is okay to be better. It is expected of you to be
yes,
better, for not only from a human standpoint, but God wants you to be better. God wants you to heal. He didn't want you to, to go through that situation and just stay there,
right,
because he gets no glory in that. That's one. Not that his purpose is for him to get glory anyway, but just the fact that he wants to be able to show how he can bring you through it, how he can bring you through anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything. And it doesn't necessarily, sometimes it means, just as we were talking about the other couple who were able to have, they were able to have more children, not replaceables, more in addition, because it added to their family. It didn't
right,
replace anything.
right,
It could, and when it comes to like a business or a job, you may have lost that may have been your baby. God is able to give you even more. Listen, I'm going to take it personally when I tell you this. As far as business and things are concerned, for me, those who know, I had a website up, and just recently, it's just, I don't know what and why, I was renewing the membership, not the membership, I was renewing my domain, and for some reason or another, I don't know what happened, but in the process of that, everything is just gone. The entire website, all of the work that my web designer did, all of the, everything, and I didn't give her much. I mean, I didn't give her, all I gave her was the words to put there, and I gave her the photos. She went to work and she put so much time and effort into it. But to see that all of that is gone,
exactly.
I grieved that. I
Yeah,
grieved that. I was angry. But at the same time, I know that if that happened, there's gotta be something else that's coming out of it. There's
yeah,
gotta be something else coming out of it. And sometimes it may be nothing more than, is this meant for me to, to strengthen my growth? Is this just meant for me to, to increase my faith in God? What is it for? Because
mhm,
sometimes we like to think that, everything happens. Of course, yes, everything does happen for a reason, but we like to think, okay, there's a reward coming out of this somewhere, something tangible that we're looking for. But what if that, that reward is just our growing as, as human beings? Because
right,
some people are not going to get married again. Some people are not
right,
going to be able to have children. Some people are not going to be
right,
able to, have another business. So we can't necessarily keep it there and look at it as this is all that there possibly. It has to be this way, because for the longest time, even, being divorced, my thing was, okay, I have to have better, or I have to have another, or I have to, I have to have this, I have to have that. What if it doesn't happen. I have to think about that possibility because it's not like it's not an option. And I have to be, the thing is, if God sees fit that I am single for the rest of my life, I have to be okay with that. And I still have to live with that.
And you still
So,
have to live, period. Right? You
yes,
still got to be fruitful and multiply, period.
period.
Not live with that realization, but that. And you said something that was so powerful just now about our reward being our growth. What happens if we don't see something growing? It's a
Mm,
problem. It's stunted. If your child does not grow, you're going to the doctor. And more than likely, you're going to see a problem. Or they're going to say, look, you need to give them this so they can grow. If you have a plant that does not grow, eventually it's going to revert and it's going to die. So you got to
mm-hmm.
think, what is it that I need to do? If you have a relationship that does not grow, it's going to dissipate. So growth sometimes is that very reward that I think we underestimate it. And I think you said it so well, like that growth, like I feel good because I've grown.
Mm.
I feel good because I have not gone to a baby shower since my son passed away. I am going to a baby shower, the first one in a week or so from now. And it wasn't even a thought. I was just like, oh yeah, I'll be there. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it dawned on me, I was like, wait, whoa, I'm going to shower without a second thought. That was growth. And that was something that was unspoken to me. I have a friend who's a social worker, and I remember there was a baby shower going on. I didn't go, but I sent a gift, and she was like, have you gone to any other baby showers? And I remember that one question made me think, I haven't, you know? And so when
Mm.
this came about, I was like, oh my gosh, that's growth. Like, God, that's good, and so little things like that, sometimes our rewards are our growth, because if we don't grow, something is wrong.
Mm.
Um,
That's
Bodies
good.
are made to consistently change, evolve, and grow. So I thank you for saying that. So sometimes we don't look for that exact change. Like if there's one for one, that one-to-one reward. Sometimes it's not that one-to-one. That's the same thing. It was a husband's another husband, the same child, another child, that same business, another business. How do you know it doesn't become two different businesses? That one multiplies to two and becomes businesses. Or how do you know
Mm.
that what you're doing was a for-profit, but now God wants you to create franchises of nonprofits? There's something similar that you grew and learned from, but it's different. It looks different. It feels different.
Right.
And that's sort of those thoughts there. So that was good. That
Woo.
was good. Take
And
that
we're,
with me. Growth as a reward.
man, and the thing is that we have to, one thing that came to mind when you were thinking is we can't compare. That's one thing that we have to understand. We cannot compare the two. We can't, compare this is what I had before to I have to have something like this now, or I'm looking for this specifically, or I'm looking to have something like this specifically. We can't compare because they're not going to be the same, regardless of what it is. It's not. They're not going to be the same, and that's
Right.
something that we have to try to. And listen, as I'm talking, as when I'm listening, I'm taking this in for myself as well.
Take it
You
here.
cannot, you cannot, we cannot compare. We cannot look at how each one was, because it's always going to be different, and it's not fair. To be perfectly honest, it's not fair to the other person, to the other, to yourself, especially because at the end of the day, we want new, we want fresh, and in that is sometimes lost, and that's
Right.
something that we have to come to terms with and come to deal with, because again, it's not fair, and it's not right to expect to have something like it's not good altogether just to think this has to be this way, because you never know what God has for you. Maybe it's something different. And I'm loving
Right.
y'all. Comments are coming in, and I'm loving them. I am loving these comments. I want to read Christina's a second. She says, it's amazing to watch how God creatively orders our steps. We are multi-dimensional beings. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And Patricia, that's my auntie. She says growth also embraces change, and change includes loss. That's very true. Very true. It is unpredictable because you are not God. Come on, auntie. Come on. So we are pretty much all done here. I thank you so much, Ayanna, for taking the time to, come out and to, introduce us to who you are and all of your work, and just to get to us, help us to learn a little bit more about you and all that you've done so far. I would like for everybody to take a moment, and I want you to go to her website where you can get all of her products, everything that's there. It's Ayanna, I'm sorry, www.ayannaspeaks ayannajohnson.com. And as this is being scrolled across the screen, Ayanna, I would love for you to give us just a little bit of words of encouragement as we close.
Sure. I just want to plug, if you can also like, subscribe, share on all my social media, YouTube, Ayanna Speaks, Facebook, everything is Ayanna Speaks. You can find me there. I would appreciate it. I would love to hear your comments, words of encouragement. I think what we just said, growth is the reward. No matter how tough the situation, or how strange the situation, or how different the situation, or how you are processing any situation, growth is the reward. And I would encourage each and every one of us to take a moment. I know there's diverse audiences. So one, if you believe in God, take a moment to say, Lord, open up my eyes so I can see growth, so I can appreciate it. And to those just feel like, look, you're in a good place by yourself, just kind of take a moment to process and say, am I appreciating the areas of growth? Let me be still so I can discern areas of growth so I can appreciate it. And that's really my word of encouragement. Appreciate your areas of growth. You're not who you were. And there's so much more that you can explore and become. Appreciate those moments of growth.
Awesome. Thank you so much once again, guys. Make sure that you like, subscribe, share everything that is support. Not just because she's my sister-in-law, just because I asked you to, but because her work speaks for itself. Honestly, as you've seen and heard so far, go out and go to her website, purchase her CD or digital, download or stream. All of those things count. Purchase all of her work. I mean, you're going to be blessed by it. I guarantee you. And we're done for this afternoon. You have tuned into another episode of Speaking Plain English. Until next time.
Bye.